Well, thank you, Paul, and thanks to the organizers for inviting me here today. Certainly, it's been an interesting meeting, and last night's reception also was very enjoyable. The title of my talk today is Global Regulatory Interventions in the War Against Mycotoxins. I think this title is probably a little broader than what I'll be speaking about today. Nega Baru spoke a little about FDA's mycotoxin program, US FDA's mycotoxin program, and that's what I'll be speaking about as well, with some more details in certain areas. But also, I'd like to talk a little about Codex Alimentarius and the Codex Committee on Fats on Contaminants in Food. This is something we work with and do a lot of work over the years for contaminants, including mycotoxins. So I'd like to, and I guess that does encompass global regulatory interventions. So specifically on my outline, I'll be speaking about FDA authority as well as citizen responsibility for food safety, some of the regulatory levels FDA has for mycotoxins specifically. I'll be talking about our mycotoxin compliance program, as well as mycotoxins and Codex. Again, this is a lot of work we're involved with, as well as many different countries throughout the world. And I'd follow up as well on FSMA. This is the Food Safety Modernization Act. This is something new that's coming in the U.S., so I'll just touch on that just to give you an idea of this new regulation. So I work at the Center for Food Safety and Applied Nutrition. This is the Center for Foods at US FDA. There's other centers, including the Center for Veterinary Medicine. That center addresses feed issues, but I work on the food issues. There's other centers throughout FDA. There's drugs, devices, biologics, but I work in College Park, Maryland. That's where the center is. And we're responsible for promoting and protecting the public's health by ensuring that the human food supply is safe and produced under sanitary conditions. We get our authority under the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. This provides FDA with authority in regard to adulterated foods that are in interstate commerce. So a food that doesn't leave the state generally isn't addressed by us, but it will be addressed by the state health authorities. And Section 402 of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act defines specifically when a food is adulterated. And Nega, I believe he discussed some of this on Monday about 402A1. This is the section on adulteration. When a food bears or contains any poisonous or deleterious substance, and then it must satisfy number 2 as well. If the substance is added, FDA must show that the quantity of substance in a food may render the food injurious to health. And then if in fact we determine that the substance is not added, then we must show that it ordinarily renders, which is a higher bar for us to show. So with mycotoxins, we consider mycotoxins a substance that's added, and so we have to satisfy the may render. So under 402A1, we have different enforcement options. We have regulatory levels. This is included under the Code of Federal Regulations, Title 21, Part 109. There's different options. There's something called tolerances. We haven't set many tolerances. I'll discuss that a little later. There's something called regulatory limits, not to be confused with a more generic term, regulatory levels. Action levels, this is something that we have set for mycotoxins and you probably are familiar with, as well as guidance levels. Where we don't have specific limits or levels established, we look at contaminants when we find those in foods on a case-by-case basis using safety assessment. Obviously, we'll be looking at the level of the contaminant in the food, specifically what type of food it is and consumption of that food, specific subgroups of the population that might be more sensitive to that food. And we'll also look at any available toxicological information. If we do find an adulterated food, we have different procedures. We can, for a domestic food, we can seize that food, or we can request a voluntary recall. For imports, we can detain the food, or we can refuse entry of that type of food. More specifically on regulatory levels, we have tolerances. This is something that we've done in the past. This is a formal rulemaking process. It's very time-consuming to both establish, revise, or revoke these levels. We've established one tolerance, or actually a number of tolerances for PCBs in various foods. Back in the 70s, these are still on the books. And what we found is that, in fact, again, it's a very time-consuming process to actually go through this whole rulemaking process. Another level, again, is regulatory limits, which is, again, a specific type of regulatory level. We haven't established regulatory limits to this time. There's something called action levels. This is something you're probably familiar with in regard to mycotoxins. These are informal guidelines for FDA field staff. These are included in compliance policy guides, and then we make these available to our field when they go out and inspect facilities and collect samples. It provides information to both the field and to the labs on specific conditions, as well as enforcement criteria for different samples that are taken. And then we also have something called guidance levels, and these are guidelines issued to food industries rather than to the field. Is specific to an industry, and this provides guidance concerning levels of a particular mycotoxin that's believed to provide an adequate margin of safety to protect human health. Now, there's certainly there's factors that impact setting regulatory levels, the availability of analytical methodology. Certainly, we need methods out there, not only for us to determine whether or not there is an issue, but also for industry to look for it in the food that they're producing. In setting levels, we also have to know about the incidence of certain levels in food. If we don't find a certain contaminant, then there's, again, no need to be setting levels. Availability of toxicological data, obviously this will be incorporated into information when determining levels. And then there's also the need to maintain an adequate food supply at a reasonable cost. Certainly we don't want to set levels so low that a food can no longer be consumed, so there's a risk and a benefit associated with levels. We have a strategic plan to control mycotoxins at FDA. This includes conducting science-based risk analysis, including risk assessment, risk management, as well as communication, establishment of regulatory levels. I'll discuss specifically some regulatory levels that we have for different mycotoxins. Monitoring susceptible commodities. This is done through our compliance program for mycotoxins. Taking appropriate enforcement action, again, depending on if it's in domestic or if it's an import, we can do different things, the seize or recall product, or we can detain or refuse entry for imported product. We also work with other agencies. This includes our Center for Veterinary Medicine. Again, they deal with the feeds and any feed going into animal-based products. We work with them on any issues. And again, CVM would work with USDA on meat and poultry products. Our EPA, we would work with them on different issues, say involving fungicides. But we work with other agencies as well, other regulatory agencies from around the world, not just through Codex, but through other different groups that we meet. And then also providing guidance to the food industry. This is something that we've done in the past as well. And here I'm simply listing the mycotoxins of public health concern, probably pretty familiar, the aflatoxins, corn, peanuts, tree nuts, dairy products. For fumonisins, we have corn, deoxynivalenol, cereal grains, patulin, we have apple juice products, and ochratoxin A, wheat, barley, grapes, and coffee. Now, we have established action levels for different mycotoxins. We have an action level of 20 part per billion for total aflatoxins in all food products for humans except milk. Again, the Center for Veterinary Medicine also establishes action levels for feed products. This is specifically for food, human food. We have an action level for aflatoxin M1 in milk, and we also have an action level for 50 parts per billion for patulin in apple juice and apple juice products, and this actually is included in our hazards and control guide for, we have a juice HACCP regulation, and that would be considered one of the hazards for juice. We also have advisory levels for Don and wheat. This was originally issued in 1982, and then it was updated in 1993, and then reaffirmed in a 2010 guidance. Currently, it's a 1 part per million in finished wheat products. This is for flour, bran, and germ. We also dropped the original advisory for wheat intended for milling. And we also have guidance levels for fumonisins in corn, for human food. Degermed dried milk corn products is 2 parts per million. And then the list is follows down below. Regarding the action levels, these are all included again in our compliance policy guides. These are all online and available, so you can look exactly what we're actually providing to the field regarding these different mycotoxins. And we also have these available, the guidance levels on websites of the advisory level for Don and wheat, as well as the guidance levels for fumonisins and corn. Again, as I mentioned, we have a compliance program for mycotoxins. The objectives is to collect and analyze samples of imported and domestic food for adherence to our action levels and guidance levels. And then another objective is to prevent entry or remove from interstate commerce those products that are above our action levels or guidance levels. Again, this program is updated usually annually. We look at results from the past year, and actually we do this basically on a monthly basis to determine whether or not we need to change the sampling plan for the next year. If we do see spikes in mycotoxins or any specific issues, we do also issue field assignments, especially for mycotoxins when you do find problems depending upon weather conditions. And we're currently analyzing in this program aflatoxin, patulin, deoxynivalenol, fumonisins, and ochratoxin A. Other uses of data for our monitoring program, we use this for estimates of the incidence and levels of mycotoxin contamination, for dietary exposure data for conducting risk assessments. We use it for establishing new action levels or guidance levels or updating current ones. And we also use this information to develop U.S. positions, such as at Codex. Currently, we're working on a multi-residue method to be used in our field labs. Field labs currently use an LC-UV fluorescent method, and this method only looks at single class of mycotoxins. What we're trying to do is develop and implement these a multi-residue method. This is isotope dilution, LC-MS-based multi-mycotoxin method. Certainly, we've heard a lot of discussion about how we see not just one, but multiple mycotoxins perhaps in different products. So having the ability to look at multiple mycotoxins is very important. And I believe Dr. Kazang has a poster, I think it's at P7, that describes these methods that we're hoping to adopt in field labs very soon. So here I'd like to just switch gears and talk a little about Codex. We had the the FDA heads the U.S. delegation to the CCCF. This is the Codex Committee on Contaminants in Food. Certainly this committee addresses issues involving mycotoxins. They also have a general standard that outlines some other maximum levels for other contaminants like toxic elements, persistent environmental contaminants, even radionuclides. But mycotoxins is one of the major issues addressed by the CCCF. I've listed some of the MLs down below for some of the different products. Here's additional for DON MLs. These are more recently adopted by the Codex Commission, as well as Fumonisins MLs. But in addition to MLs, I think sometimes what's overlooked are some of the codes of practice that are developed for some of these different mycotoxin issues. Certainly setting an ML is an important regulatory step, but providing advice and recommendations to countries is very helpful. And what happens at Codex generally is that a code of practice is first developed on a particular contaminant to see whether or not that can affect levels of a contaminant, hopefully reduce those. And if in fact the code of practice can't, then an ML can be developed. But there's codes of practice for all sorts of different mycotoxins and cereals, with annexes for some of the different mycotoxins. There's a code of practice for aflatoxic contamination in peanuts, tree nuts, dried figs. These are all separate documents. Ochratoxin A contamination in wine and cocoa and coffee, as well as patulin in apple juice. Current activities at Codex, there's a discussion paper on the development of MLs for mycotoxins in spices. I believe this is being done by India, is the chairing electronic work group. There's also a code of practice for the prevention and reduction of mycotoxic contamination in spices. I believe that's being chaired by Spain. Recently, a revised code of practice for prevention and reduction of mycotoxin contamination in cereals, as well as those annexes, were forwarded to the CAC. I believe those will be at the CAC in July and hopefully adopted. There's also a new draft annex on ergot and ergot alkaloids in cereal. That's at step 3 in the process, so it's not too close to adoption. That will go back around, and I believe Germany is chairing the electronic work group for that. There's an ML for total aflatoxins in ready-to-eat peanuts. This document, I believe, is on hold pending a JECFA evaluation in November. Recently, at the most recent CCCF meeting, there were a number of mycotoxins that were forwarded for evaluation by JECFA, and this is going to happen in November 2016. And then I believe that the ergot alkaloids and fumonisins in wheat were added to the JECFA priority list. So those mycotoxins actually, they won't be evaluated in November, but will be evaluated sometime soon by JECFA. So that's sort of the idea. Again, we do a lot of work at the Codex Alimentarius and the Contaminant Committee, as well as at JECFA. We really believe this is important work. We spend a lot of resources on this, and we do think that in regard to global regulatory interventions, that this that would actually be a very important activity. And the last part, I just want to touch on FSMA. This is FDA's Food Safety Modernization Act. There's been a few discussions on this. This is actually, it was enacted in January 4th, 2011. And in short, it focuses on preventing, detecting, and responding to food safety problems, as well as improving the safety of imported foods. Within FSMA, there's a number of different regulations. Our office has been working on preventive controls for human food, but there's also a preventive controls for animal food or feed, as well as some other regulations including a supplier verification program, as well as a sanitary transport and intentional adulteration regulation. The main theme really of this legislation is prevention. In the past, we've always been accused of being more reactive rather than prevent outbreaks, and so we're applying really very much similar to HACCP regulations to all other different foods, and hopefully it'll allow food companies to look at their food process and determine where the hazards are and implement preventive controls to address these hazards. It also addresses import safety. The U.S. has increasingly increased imports of food, and obviously when you bring in imported food, it's much more difficult to address hazards when it's outside of your borders. So these regulations do address import safety as well. So again, what does the preventive controls rule do? It establishes new requirements for hazard analysis and risk-based preventive controls, and basically there's a food safety plan that's required. Something else it does, it modernizes long-standing current GMP requirements. This is found in 110. These requirements hadn't been updated for some time, and we were planning to revise those, but since we have these the FSMA regulations, we decided to revise the GMP regulations at the same time. One other thing we did, we included the GMP into the preventive controls regulation, so the old GMP regulations found in 110 are now in section 117, so that's something new. And here is a food safety plan, including the hazard analysis and preventive controls, as well as some other steps. We're planning guidances to industry to explain exactly what we would require within some of these important sections, hazard analysis and preventive controls, as well as some of the other requirements. Compliance dates for businesses, for very small, compliance dates are September 2018. For small businesses, compliance is September 2017, and for all other businesses, compliance actually is this September. So this is something is happening very soon. And information on FSMA, we have this on our website. You can actually subscribe and receive emails regarding this if you would like that. But there is, to submit questions about FSMA and FDA, there's something where you can actually go to contact us, and we have a whole team of staff that are answering questions regarding FSMA and any specific questions industry has about FSMA. So I think I'm just out of town, but again, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me, and I can certainly try to answer any questions. Thank you.